The last love song I ever wrote for my wife was a lie. I performed it for her on our 5th anniversary, my voice soft, the chords gentle. She cried, telling me it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard. She didn't know that as I sang about her eyes, all I could see was the reflection of her phone screen, angled away from me. She didn't know that the melody was trying to drown out the sound of another man's name whispered in her sleep. She thought it was our song. But it was my goodbye. And it was nothing compared to the song I would write next. Betrayal has a sound. It's the silence in a room that used to be filled with laughter. It's the click of a phone being locked. For me, I decided to give that sound a melody and a chorus. If you've ever felt the sting of being underestimated, of having your loyalty thrown back in your face, then you're in the right place. Stick around, and maybe press that subscribe button, because this is the story of how I turned the deepest pain of my life into a truth the entire world would sing along to. For as long as I can remember, my life had a soundtrack. Every memory, every feeling, was tied to a chord progression, a lyrical fragment. I wasn't the life of the party, I was the guy in the corner with a worn-out Martin guitar, translating the noise of the world into something that made sense. Music was my language, my architecture, the very marrow in my bones. And for 10 years, Melissa was my muse. We met in college. I was playing a sad, rambling tune at an open mic night, and she was the only one in the noisy cafe who actually listened. After my set, she came up to me, not with the usual empty compliments, but with a question. "The G minor chord in the bridge," she'd said, her eyes so bright, "was that for the doubt, or for the resignation?" I think I fell in love with her right there on that sticky floor. She didn't just hear my music, she understood its grammar. Our life together was built on that foundation. We had a small, sun-drenched apartment above a flower shop that always smelled faintly of rain and lavender. My days were a patchwork of writing jingles for local commercials, paying the bills, and pouring my soul into my own albums, the ones I called Sunlight and Scars. Melissa was my first listener, my most honest critic, my fiercest champion. When my song Cobblestone Heart got its first spin on the local indie station, she was the one who screamed so loud the neighbors complained. We danced in the living room, a cheap bottle of champagne fizzing over, and I felt a kind of perfect, simple happiness that I thought was bulletproof. She was the steady beat my chaotic melody was written over. My anchor. Friends called us a golden couple. And from the outside, we were. I was the quiet, brooding artist. She was the vibrant, supportive partner who believed in him. She handled the bills, she remembered birthdays, she made sure I ate when I was lost in a song for 12 hours straight. In return, I wrote her into eternity. Her laughter was in the upbeat tracks. Her quiet strength was in the ballads. Our entire life was a co-written song, and I thought it was a masterpiece. But illusions, no matter how beautiful, are made of glass. And the cracks started so small I almost missed them. It began with her phone. It had always been a shared object, lying face up on the coffee table, a conduit for takeout orders and funny videos. Then one day it wasn't. It was face down. Boys. If it buzzed, she'd snatch it up with a speed that felt frantic. Her fingers, once relaxed as she texted, were now a blur. Her shoulders hunched, her body angled away from me as if shielding a state secret. "Who was that?" I'd ask, my voice casual, trying to pretend I hadn't noticed the change. "Oh, just work," she'd say, the answer becoming a familiar, flat refrain. Sharon's being impossible about the quarterly reports again. Melissa worked in marketing. There were always reports, always an impossible Sharon. For months, I accepted it. I told myself I was the paranoid artist, prone to melodrama. My own insecurities were painting shadows where there was only light. I was working on a difficult new album, feeling creatively drained. Of course I was projecting. It was easier to believe I was broken than to believe we were. Then came the late nights. They started as once a week, then twice. "We're pushing for a huge deadline," she'd explain, texting me from the office. "Don't wait up." I'd make her a plate, cover it in foil, and fall asleep alone to the hum of the refrigerator, my guitar silent in its stand. The apartment, once our cozy sanctuary, began to feel vast and empty. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy. It was waiting. One night, she came home well after 2 a.m. I'd been pretending to be asleep, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. She slipped into bed, trying to be quiet, and for a moment, I thought that would be it. But then a scent hit me. It wasn't her usual perfume, the one that smelled like vanilla and amber. It was a sharp, masculine scent. Cologne. Something clean and peppery, like gin and pine. A scent I'd never smelled before. My eyes snapped open in the darkness. My heart started a frantic, ugly rhythm against my ribs. Who smells like that? Where have you been? The questions screamed in my head, but I didn't let them out. I stayed perfectly still, feigning sleep, my body rigid. I lay there for hours, listening to the soft, even sound of her breathing, and felt a chasm opening up between us on the mattress. The denial, however, was a fortress. It's incredible what the mind will do to protect itself. I rationalized everything. Maybe she'd been in a crowded elevator at work. Maybe she'd hugged a male colleague goodbye. I built elaborate, flimsy justifications for every red flag, because the alternative was unthinkable. It would mean our song, our masterpiece, was built on a lie. The fortress came crumbling down on a rainy Tuesday in October. It was the kind of miserable, bone-chilling evening that makes you want to stay inside, wrapped in a blanket. We were out of milk. A small, domestic problem. Melissa was stuck on a conference call, so I told her I'd run to the corner store. I pulled on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and stepped out into the slick, gray world. Our neighbor, Jason, lived 2 houses down. He was a finance guy, flashy and loud, with a gleaming black Audi he was always polishing in his driveway. He and his wife had come to our barbecues. He'd clap me on the back, call my music cool stuff, and then immediately change the subject to stock markets or golf. I found him disingenuous, a man who wore his success like a costume, but Melissa was always friendly with him. "He's just a bit much, Ethan," she'd say with a little laugh. "It's harmless." As I walked towards the store, the rain plastering my hair to my forehead, I saw his Audi idling at the corner, just out of sight of our apartment building. The windows were fogged up, but the dome light was on. I thought it was strange, him just sitting there. Maybe his car had stalled. I slowed down, my curiosity piqued, my sneakers squeaking on the wet pavement. And then, my front door opened. I froze, ducking instinctively behind a thick oak tree, my heart seizing in my chest. It was Melissa. She hurried down the steps, pulling her coat tight around her, her phone clutched in her hand. She wasn't looking towards the store. She was looking towards the corner, towards the black Audi. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the world had gone into slow motion. Every drop of rain was a tiny, cold needle against my skin. She glanced around, a quick, furtive movement, and then she practically ran to the car. The passenger door swung open. She slid inside. I should have looked away. I should have turned around and walked in the opposite direction, run until my lungs burned, and just disappeared. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed, a statue in the pouring rain, watching the destruction of my life unfold in a 4-door sedan. Through the fogged-up glass, I saw her silhouette lean across the console. I saw Jason's shape meet hers. It wasn't a friendly greeting. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was a kiss. A deep, hungry kiss, their heads tilted, desperate. A violation of the very air I breathed. Even from 50 feet away, in the dim, watery light of the street lamp, the intimacy of it was a physical blow. It knocked the wind out of my lungs, leaving a hollow, ringing silence in its place. Then the dome light clicked off, plunging them into darkness. The engine revved, and the Audi pulled away from the curb, its red taillights bleeding into the rain-streaked street before disappearing around the corner. I stood there. I don't know for how long. The milk was forgotten. The cold was forgotten. The only thing that existed was the searing, technicolor image burned onto the inside of my eyelids. My wife, my muse, in the arms of our neighbor. The walk home was a blur. My keys fumbled against the lock. The apartment, our sanctuary, felt alien and hostile. Her scent was everywhere, on the pillows, on the towel in the bathroom, in the air itself. Every photo of us on the wall was a monument to a lie. The smiling, happy couple in those frames were strangers. Or maybe I was the stranger. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I walked into my small studio, the room where I had written 100 songs about love and hope, and I sat down. I picked up my Martin, the one she'd bought me for our first Christmas together. My fingers felt clumsy, thick, and unfamiliar on the strings. I tried to play a chord, a simple G major, the happiest chord I know. What came out was a discordant, ugly noise. My hands were shaking. Not just trembling, but convulsing, a tremor that started deep in my chest and radiated out to my fingertips. The smooth wood of the guitar's neck felt like splintered ice. I looked at my hands, these hands that had only ever created things meant to be beautiful, and I saw the hands of a stranger. I put the guitar down. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. It was filled with 10 years of memories, now tainted and warped. Every "I love you," every shared glance, every song was now a question mark. A piece of a grand deception in which I was the only one who didn't know the punchline. That night, Melissa came home late again, full of apologies about a server crash at work. She kissed my cheek, and I didn't flinch, but it took every ounce of my will not to recoil. Her touch felt like a brand. Her voice was nails on a chalkboard. I muttered something about not feeling well and went to the studio, locking the door behind me. I sat in the dark for hours. The pain wasn't a clean wound. It was a messy, sprawling poison, seeping into every part of me. It was humiliation. It was rage. It was a grief so profound it felt like a death. And in the middle of that suffocating darkness, a single, cold thought surfaced. She took my past. She took my present. She was trying to take my future. But she couldn't have my music. I picked up the guitar again. My hands were still shaking, but this time, I didn't fight it. I let the tremor travel down the strings. I didn't try to play a pretty chord. I played the sound of my world breaking. It was a jagged, dissonant cry. A low, growling E minor that felt like it was being ripped from the earth. And then words started to come. Not of love, not of hope. They were words of rust and glass and shadows. Words about a picture-perfect smile and the venom hiding behind it. For the first time in months, I wasn't blocked. I wasn't empty. I was overflowing. That night, sitting in the ruins of my life, I began to write. Not a love song. Not a ballad. I was writing an indictment. I was writing about a woman who wore a mask of devotion, and the fool who was only just learning to see the cracks in it. My revenge wouldn't be a scream that she could dismiss. It wouldn't be an argument she could twist. It would be a symphony. And the whole world was going to hear it. The days that followed were a masterclass in psychological torture, and I was both the prisoner and the warden. Living under the same roof as Melissa became an exercise in surreal detachment. I felt like a ghost in my own life, watching a movie where I knew the tragic twist, but the other characters were still blissfully reading their lines. We moved around each other in the small apartment with a forced, brittle politeness. The air was thick with things unsaid, so dense I felt like I had to push my way through it just to get from the bedroom to the kitchen. She'd ask, "How was your day?" And I'd say, "Fine." My voice would sound hollow even to my own ears. I'd watch her laugh at something on TV, a genuine, throaty laugh that I used to adore, and I would feel nothing but a cold, flat emptiness. The love hadn't just died. It had been exhumed and desecrated. What was left was a phantom limb, an ache where something vital used to be. Her gaslighting, which I had once been blind to, was now glaringly obvious. It was subtle, insidious, and designed to make me feel like I was the one losing my mind. "You seem so distant lately, Ethan," she said one evening, putting her hand on my arm. I fought the urge to pull away. Her touch felt electric, but in the way of a cattle prod. "Is everything okay? Are you stuck on a song?" "I'm stuck on the image of you kissing our neighbor," I wanted to scream. "I'm stuck on the fact that our entire marriage is a lie." Instead, I just shrugged. "Just thinking." "You're always thinking," she said, her tone shifting from concern to a faint, patronizing annoyance. "You get into these moods. You know, it's not always about you and your music. I have stress too." It was a masterstroke of deflection. In one sentence, she had invalidated my feelings, centered herself, and made me out to be a self-absorbed artist. The old Ethan would have apologized. He would have felt guilty, made her dinner, and tried to be more present. The new Ethan just nodded, the cold resolve in his chest hardening another degree. Every word she spoke was just another line of lyric for the song I was now living to write. Sleep became a stranger. I'd lie in bed, my back to her, my muscles clenched so tight I'd have cramps in my legs by morning. I'd listen to her breathe, wondering if she was dreaming of him. The 2 a.m. darkness became my creative sanctuary. While she slept, oblivious, I would slip out of bed and go to my studio. I'd lock the door, put on my headphones to muffle the sound, and work. The song was no longer just a song. It was an excavation. I was digging through the rubble of our 10 years together, unearthing every half-truth, every convenient excuse, every moment that, in hindsight, was a clue. I poured it all into the music. The way her eyes would flicker to her phone. The scent of that strange cologne. The feigned exhaustion. The casual lies that were as easy for her as breathing. Writing it was agony, but it was a righteous agony. For the first time since that rainy night, I felt a flicker of power. She had control of our reality, but I had control of the narrative. My guitar wasn't a source of comfort anymore. It was a weapon I was meticulously sharpening. Each chord was a whetstone, each lyric a honing of the blade. I tried once to write something else. A jingle for a local car dealership had come in, a stupidly upbeat, happy little tune that would pay the rent for 2 months. I sat down, tried to find a cheerful C major progression, and attempted to write lyrics about family-friendly prices. The words wouldn't come. The chords sounded like a joke. My fingers kept defaulting to the dark, minor key progression of the revenge song. I hammered the keys of the piano in frustration, a dissonant crash that echoed the chaos in my head. I couldn't write lies anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was sunny and bright. The only truth I had left was the ugly one, and it demanded to be told. The deception escalated. One Saturday, I was walking past Jason's house on my way to the park, just trying to clear my head. His wife, Sarah, was out front, watering her petunias. She was a kind, quiet woman who always had a gentle smile for me. "Hi, Ethan," she called out. "Haven't seen you and Melissa at the neighborhood cookouts lately." "Been busy," I mumbled, my throat tight. "Working on a new album." "Oh, that's wonderful. Tell Melissa I said hi." Jason mentioned she's been putting in some crazy hours at her firm. He's been the same way. Said they were both on a big project. I guess that's the corporate world for you. My blood ran cold. I managed a weak smile and kept walking, but my mind was spinning. They were on a big project together? The lie was coordinated. It was a conspiracy. This wasn't a fleeting mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing affair, complete with a cover story they fed to their respective, unsuspecting spouses. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. They weren't just betraying us, they were mocking us, weaving a shared fiction while we, the loyal partners, were left to play the part of the fool. That conversation was a turning point. Any lingering shred of doubt, any pathetic hope that I had misinterpreted things, evaporated under the harsh sunlight of that Saturday morning. My pain, which had been a wild, chaotic storm, began to crystallize into something cold, hard, and focused. It was no longer just about heartbreak. It was about justice. The song began to take its final shape. I decided on the title, The Mask. It was perfect. It was about the beautiful, smiling mask Melissa wore for me, for our friends, for the world. And it was about the ugly, twisted face underneath. The lyrics became more specific, more pointed. I didn't use their names, of course. I didn't have to. I was a songwriter. I dealt in imagery and metaphor. I wrote a line about a borrowed cologne that lingers on a collar, and another about secrets whispered in a black sedan parked just around the bend. I wrote about a man with a salesman's smile and country club hands, a description that fit Jason to a T. The chorus was the kill shot. It was a raw, soaring plea that built into an accusation. Singer's note: Imagine this sung with rising, raw emotion, starting pained and ending powerful. And you wear the mask of the perfect wife. You built me a home with a gilded knife. You smile and you swear that you're mine alone. But the truth has a sound, and it's not your own. And everyone hears it but me. I wrote that last line, and then I changed it. That was the old me. The victim. The fool. I scratched it out, my pen tearing the paper slightly. The new line came out in a rush, fierce and final. But the truth has a sound, and I'm turning it on. There was the declaration. The shift from passive suffering to active revenge. One evening I nearly broke. Melissa came home in a surprisingly good mood, carrying a bag of our favorite takeout Thai food. She set it on the table, humming one of my old songs, one I had written for her years ago. The casual hypocrisy was staggering. I got Pad See You, she said brightly. I know it's your favorite. I thought we could just relax tonight. Watch a movie. She was trying to build a bridge, to patch a crack she didn't know I could see was a canyon. She kissed me, and her lips were soft, and for a terrifying second, my resolve wavered. The weight of the constant vigilance, the secret, the rage, it was exhausting. Part of me, a weak, desperate part, just wanted it to be over. It wanted to believe the lie. I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of guilt, any flicker of the truth. I saw nothing. Just the same clear, brown eyes I had fallen in love with. The mask was perfect. It was seamless. And in that moment, my weakness burned away, replaced by a chilling certainty. A simple confrontation would accomplish nothing. She would deny it. She would cry. She would twist it around and call me crazy, jealous, insecure. She would make it my fault. An argument would be a fire that consumed only me, leaving her unscathed to continue her lies. No, a conversation was beneath this betrayal. This betrayal deserved an audience. It deserved to be permanent. Etched in vinyl, broadcast over airwaves, a permanent scar on her carefully curated reputation. I ate the noodles, which tasted like cardboard in my mouth. We watched a movie, and I didn't register a single frame. All I could think about were the pages of lyrics locked in my studio. My plan. A few days later, I finished the song. I played it through one last time, from start to finish. The melody was haunting, the chords full of tension and release. The words were undeniable. It was the most honest, brutal, and powerful thing I had ever written. It was my pain, distilled and weaponized. I held the lyric sheet in my hand, the paper feeling heavy, like a death sentence. The mask was complete. And I knew exactly where I was going to make her wear it. The venue had to be perfect. It couldn't be some anonymous bar where my words would dissipate into the drunken din. It needed to be a place with history. With ghosts. It needed to be the Lamplight. The Lamplight was a small, legendary listening room downtown. It was all dark wood, exposed brick, and the ghosts of 1,000 songs sung on its tiny, Persian rugged stage. It was the first place I ever got a paid gig. It was the place I'd taken Melissa on our third date, where I'd played a song just for her and won her over completely. We had so many memories there. Our initials were carved into a corner of the bar. It was our place. And that's why I had to burn it down. Metaphorically, of course. I would use the cradle of our love as the stage for its execution. The poetry of it was just too perfect. The next morning, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, I called the owner, a grizzled old fogy named Sal. "Ethan, my boy," he boomed through the phone. "Long time no see. You finally finished that magnum opus of yours?" "Something like that, Sal," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Listen, I know it's last minute, but do you have any open slots for the showcase on Friday night?" "For you, boys." The 10 o'clock slot just opened up. "Some kid got the flu. It's yours if you want it. You got something new for us." "Yeah," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. "It's a new one. Very personal." "Those are the best kind," Sal said, oblivious. "See you Friday." I hung up the phone, a cold sweat breaking out on my neck. The 10 o'clock slot. Prime time. The place would be packed with locals, music lovers, and a handful of people we actually knew. The die was cast. There was no turning back now. For the next 2 days, I rehearsed the mask obsessively. I didn't just practice the chords and the melody, I practiced my composure. I sang it over and over in my studio, forcing myself to get through the lyrics without my voice cracking, without my eyes welling up. The first few times I failed. The verse about seeing her in another man's car would choke me up, and I'd have to stop, my breath catching in my throat. This couldn't happen on stage. The performance needed to be controlled. It had to be delivered not with the trembling hands of a victim, but with the steady, cold precision of a surgeon. I was removing a tumor from my life, and my hand could not shake. The hardest part was still ahead, inviting Melissa. I had to orchestrate her presence. The song would be meaningless if the mask itself wasn't in the room to hear it crack. I waited until Thursday evening, the night before the show. She was getting ready to go out, another late night with the girls, which I now knew was a transparent lie. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, leaning against the frame, trying to look casual. "Hey, so I have a show tomorrow night," I said. She paused, applying her mascara, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. "Oh, that's great, honey. Where at?" "The Lamplight," I said, watching her face carefully. A flicker of something crossed her features. Nostalgia, maybe. "I have the 10 o'clock slot. I'm debuting a new song I've been working on. It's important to me. I'd really love it if you were there." She turned around, a bright, practiced smile on her face. It was the mask in all its glory. "Of course I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it. My #1 fan, remember?" She walked over and gave me a quick, dry kiss. "I have to run, but you can save me a seat right up front." The ease with which she agreed, the patronizing confidence in her voice, it was like gasoline on a fire. She wasn't coming to support me. She was coming to play the part of the supportive wife, a role she had perfected. She had no idea she was attending her own trial. Friday was the longest day of my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sit still. I paced the apartment, my guitar in its case leaning against the wall like a loaded rifle. Every tick of the clock was a countdown to detonation. By the time evening came, my nerves were shot, but a strange, icy calm had settled over me. This was happening. It was real. We drove to the Lamplight separately. She was meeting her girlfriends for dinner nearby first. Another lie, I was sure. Probably a pre-show drink with Jason to coordinate their stories. The thought made me sick, but it also hardened my resolve. I got to the venue early and did my sound check. The room was empty, save for Sal and a bartender polishing glasses. The stage felt huge. The single microphone stand looked like an executioner's post. My voice echoed in the cavernous silence. It sounded small, fragile. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and ran through the first verse in my head. Steady. Precise. Surgeon. By 9:45, the place was packed. The air was warm and smelled of spilled beer, perfume, and anticipation. I stood backstage, peering through a crack in the curtain. I saw familiar faces, friends from college, other local musicians, people from our neighborhood. My stomach twisted. I was about to detonate a bomb in the middle of our shared social circle. Then I saw her. Melissa. She swept in, smiling and waving at people she knew. She was with 2 of her friends, both of whom gave me a little wave. She looked beautiful. She was wearing a red dress I'd always loved. The mask was stunning tonight. She found a small table right near the front, just as she'd promised. She looked up at the stage, a proud, expectant smile on her face. The look of a woman who believes she is adored. The look of a woman who has no idea the sky is about to fall on her head. Sal stepped up to the mic. "All right, folks, settle down, settle down. We've got a real treat for you next. A hometown favorite, a man whose fingers and voice can break your heart and put it back together again. Please give a warm Lamplight welcome to Ethan." The applause was a dull roar in my ears. I walked out of the wings, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I strapped on my acoustic guitar, the familiar weight a small comfort. The spotlight was blindingly hot. I couldn't see the individual faces in the crowd anymore, just a dark sea of shifting shapes. But I knew exactly where she was. I could feel her eyes on me. I adjusted the microphone. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. My palms were slick with sweat. I gripped the pick tighter. "Hey everyone," I said, my voice coming out as a croak. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Thanks for coming out. I have a new song for you tonight. It's a story, I guess. It's called The Mask." I looked directly at her table. She beamed, giving me a little thumbs up. She thought it was for her. In a way, she was right. I took one final, shaky breath, filling my lungs with the stale, electric air. This was it. No more hiding. No more sleepless nights. No more swallowing the poison of her secrets. The truth was about to have its moment. The truth was about to be turned on. My fingers found the opening chords, that dark, brooding E minor. The room fell silent, the way it always did when the music started. I saw Melissa lean forward, her expression a perfect blend of pride and love. And then I began to sing. The first verse left my lips not as a melody, but as a confession. The chords were sparse, just my voice hanging in the thick, silent air of the club. "Sunrise paints the window pane, you're sleeping next to me. A perfect picture in a perfect frame, for all the world to see. You whisper that you love me as you're reaching for your phone, and I pretend I don't know I'm completely alone." I watched her. Her smile remained, but it became fixed, painted on. A slight furrow appeared between her eyebrows. It was a look of confusion, not recognition. She probably thought it was just another of my melancholy story songs, about some fictional couple. She tapped her fingers on the table, still playing the part of the supportive muse. Then came the second verse. The blade got sharper. "You talk about the late nights, the deadlines at your firm, a corporate kind of sacrifice, a lesson I should learn, but there's a scent you bring back home that isn't on my shelf, and you laugh at midnight with the words of someone else." Her hand, which had been tapping along, stopped. Dead still on the table. Her smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. I saw her eyes dart around the room, a flicker of panic. She was starting to hear it. Not just the lyrics, but the truth underneath them. The spotlight felt like an interrogation lamp, and for the first time, she was the one in the hot seat. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the amplifiers. No one coughed. No one whispered. Every single person was leaning in, hanging on every word. And then I hit the chorus. I didn't hold back. I let all the pain, the rage, the sleepless nights, the utter humiliation pour out of me. My voice, which had been controlled and steady, now soared with a raw, ragged power I didn't know I possessed. "And you wear the mask of the perfect wife. You built me a home with a gilded knife. You smile and you swear that you're mine alone. But the truth has a sound, and it's not your own. And the truth has a sound, and I'm turning it on." It was on that last line that her eyes met mine. And in that moment, she knew. The confusion was gone, replaced by the pale, stark horror of exposure. The mask was gone. I was looking at the real Melissa. The one who had lied, the one who had cheated, the one who was now trapped in a spotlight of her own making, with my voice as her accuser. She looked like she had been struck by lightning. Her face was ashen, her mouth slightly agape. I didn't give her a moment to breathe. I launched into the next verse, the one I had written after talking to Jason's wife. The one that sealed their fate together. The neighbor waits there in his driveway, polishes the chrome. You trade your secrets in his black sedan, a temporary home. You think you're living two lives, so clever and so grand, with a salesman's smile and your wedding band on his hand. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. It was soft but audible. People weren't just listening to a song anymore. They were watching a public execution. I saw heads subtly turn, people glancing at each other. They knew. Of course they knew. Our neighborhood wasn't that big. Jason, the guy with the black Audi and the country club membership, was a known figure. I had just connected the dots for them in a 3-minute, 3-chord symphony of truth. Melissa visibly flinched. She looked around, her face burning with a shame so profound it was almost pitiful. Her friends at the table were staring at her, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning disgust. They slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to lean away from her. I finished the song with a final, booming chorus. letting the last chord ring out until it faded into complete silence. I stood there, my chest heaving, the guitar feeling impossibly heavy in my hands. For a full 5 seconds, there was nothing. Absolute, deafening silence. I thought for a moment that I had gone too far, that I had simply horrified everyone. Then, a single person in the back started to clap. A slow, deliberate, angry clap. Another joined in. And then another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a roar. It was a standing ovation fueled by the raw, visceral power of what they had just witnessed. I saw women crying. I saw men nodding with grim, understanding faces. I had sung my own private hell, but the anthem belonged to everyone who had ever been betrayed. I didn't see Melissa leave. Amid the chaos, she must have slipped out like a phantom. When I finally looked back at her table, it was empty. Just 3 half-empty wine glasses and a crumpled napkin. Someone in the crowd had been filming it on their phone. That night, the shaky, poorly lit video was uploaded to YouTube with the title, "Local Songwriter Destroys Cheating Wife at Open Mic." I didn't think much of it. I went home to an empty, silent apartment. It was the first time I had been there alone where the silence felt peaceful. It felt clean. I packed a bag. My guitar, my laptop, a few clothes. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't staying. As I was about to leave, I took my wedding ring off and set it on the empty pillow on her side of the bed. I woke up the next morning on a friend's couch to 100 new text messages. The video had 10,000 views. By the end of the day, it had 100,000. A popular music blog wrote an article about it. A local radio station ripped the audio from the video and played it on the air. My phone didn't stop ringing. The Mask was no longer my song. It was a phenomenon. It spread like a wildfire, an anthem for the heartbroken and the betrayed. Within a week, it had millions of streams. Record labels were calling. I was inexplicably a star. But my fame was irrelevant. The true impact was happening back home. The fallout from Melissa and Jason was biblical. The song was inescapable. It was on the radio in the grocery store, blasting from cars at traffic lights, humming from the headphones of people at the gym. For Melissa, our town became a prison of her own making. Friends stopped calling. Invitations to parties dried up. People wouldn't meet her eyes in the street. They just looked down, or worse, give her a look of pity so profound it was more damning than any accusation. Her perfectly curated world of social grace and suburban popularity had been leveled. Jason got it even worse. His wife, Sarah, filed for divorce the week the song went viral. Apparently, the line about the black sedan was all the confirmation she needed for suspicions she'd had for months. At his finance firm, the story became a piece of sordid office gossip. He was no longer the slick, successful finance bro. He was the neighbor from the song. He put his house on the market a month later. I never spoke to Melissa again. Her lawyers sent my lawyers some papers. I signed them. I didn't ask for a thing, except my freedom. The story I heard, through the grapevine, was that she had a complete breakdown, blaming me, the song, the internet, everyone but herself. She couldn't understand. The song didn't lie. It didn't exaggerate. It simply told the truth. Her greatest crime, it turned out, wasn't the affair itself, but the belief that she was clever enough to get away with it. Resolution and reflection, 1 to 2 minutes. Months later, I was on tour, playing The Mask, to sold-out crowds of thousands of people, all of them screaming the lyrics back at me. They weren't just singing a song, they were singing their stories. The woman whose husband left her for her sister. The man whose partner emptied their bank account and disappeared. My personal pain had become a communal vessel, a place for people to pour their own grief and find a moment of catharsis. My revenge was never about a shouting match in the living room or a dramatic confrontation. That kind of anger burns out. It's temporary. What I did was permanent. I didn't just expose her, I turned her betrayal into a piece of art. I took the ugliest thing that ever happened to me and I made it beautiful, powerful, and eternal. She and Jason will eventually be forgotten, just 2 more people who made a selfish, messy mistake. But the song? The song will live forever. Every time it's played, every time someone sings along, the truth of what she did gets told again. She isn't a person anymore. She's a character in a tragedy. The villain in a #1 hit song. And for the first time in a very long time, as I stood on that stage, with thousands of voices singing my truth back to me, I felt completely and utterly free. My pain was gone, replaced by the chords. The silence was over, replaced by a symphony. I had finally found the final note to our song. And it was a triumphant one. They say living well is the best revenge, but sometimes, writing a hit song comes in a close second. The truth always has a sound, and if you listen closely enough, you can hear it. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below and tell us about a time you found strength in the face of betrayal. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice, served cold.